Go.
Okay. Too right.
Damn right. So, welcome everybody. I'm the barrister Steven Barrett, and this is a shrinking violet known as Annunciata Rees-Mogg. And we have
Hello.
decided to do a podcast together, and we have no real clue what we're doing. So bear with
No,
us for a little while. It just struck us that left wing voices are disproportionately visible in the media. And I disagree with Annunciata because I'm a member of the Reform Party. I'm just what we call a £25 member. I just signed up. I'm a member of them. And Annunciata is a member, just a member of the Conservative Party. So neither of us talk on behalf of our parties. That's really important because both central offices are probably having a heart attack the minute they turn on this podcast. But we do not talk on behalf of them. We have no authority to set or make policy or anything else. We're just supporters of them. And Annunciata, why don't you begin by just explaining to those who don't know you what you do in politics at the moment and what you're up to.
So at the moment, I am head of communications for Popular Conservatism, which is a movement to get our politicians to understand quite how deep our problems go in this country. We've given up so much of our democracy, whether it's been to lawyers, I'm not blaming you personally, Stephen, but to politicised judges, to a politicised civil service, to very left-wing quangos, and that any new government that comes in can't actually really change very much because so much power has been outsourced. And the Tories didn't change that in their time in office, but I don't think they ever understood the depth of the problem and how much needs to be done to undo it. And we need a great restoration. And prior to doing that, I've been an MEP, for the Brexit Party, and a candidate for a couple of parliamentary elections for the Conservative Party.
And anyone who doesn't know me, I'm a barrister and I'm obsessed with the law. I've been talking in public on the law for about 6 years now. I used to write in The Spectator on the law, and I do a variety of podcasts and media appearances. I'm now more outspoken. When I started, I would have had a heart attack to even tell you that back then I was a member of the Conservative Party. But I didn't even bother telling when I was elected as a Conservative councillor. I didn't think it was proper for me as a lawyer to admit that because people might think that I was biased, and I've always put my law first. What I've learned to do now is to just say when I'm expressing a political opinion, I'll just tell you. And when I'm expressing a legal opinion, you'll see I get much more boring and much more focused. Because I do think this government in particular, this government for me is the apex of the problem. This government lies about law. And we're recording this on Wednesday, the 18th of March. And in PMQ's Prime Minister's Question Time today, Lindsay Hoyle misled the nation about the rules. So he said it's not my job to make sure the Prime Minister answers the questions. Yes, it is, Lindsay. Yes, it is. That's your job. And if it wasn't your job, and if he's sort of saying, I don't have the power, this performative nonsense, the real star of performative nonsense is the chair of the Metropolitan Police. He's very good at pretending he doesn't have the legal power whenever it suits him. But if Lindsay Hoyle didn't have the legal power, and he does, but if he didn't have the legal power, he could change the standing orders of the House of Commons so he had the power. It's just a way of controlling you all. And
Yeah.
Annunziata, tell us why you still support the Conservative Party, because you should be allowed to have that free voice.
Because I think they would make the best next government of this country. I think both of us agree that the worst outcome would be another left-wing government, which, looking at the polls at the moment, might well be a very colourful rainbow of left-wing in coalition, which I think would be incredibly damaging. And I don't know that our country would recover. I think the Conservatives do now fully understand the depth of the problems. They know what they need to do to change it so that the country can move on in a positive direction. I have concerns about various policies of reform, mainly on the economy, where it seems very muddled to me. But I think socially, the sort of social policy side, there's hardly a cigarette paper between the two. And the Conservatives' economic policy definitely wins it for me.
Yeah, so I mean, the reason that I'm in reform is that I don't think the Conservatives, I think I echo you, I don't think they realise still the size of the problem. I think it's absolutely huge. I think it's been going on for a very long time. And I think we live inside Blair's paradise. This is his paradise. This is the paradise he wanted to create, and everything's falling apart. It is a
Yeah.
complete car crash. You can't actually make paradise on Earth. Everybody who tries it always fails. Jesus warned us about that. If we're perfectly honest, it is there. Humans have written this stuff down. Over the years, many times.
Yeah.
But we live inside Tony Blair's paradise. It's a complete nightmare. To my mind, it's going to crash if we don't fix it. And I see in reform a greater appetite for fixing it, and a willingness to accept that it's going to, you can't just fix it with internet memes, you know?
Yeah. I mean, yes and no, because I mean, if you take the fuel duty vote that there was today, no Reform MPs signed, but they're doing this great, win a year's free fuel, which is great publicity. But is it great policy? Is it great politics? And I do have a worry that there is a great appetite for change, but not necessarily the depth of institutional knowledge of what needs to be changed, or the will to put in the really hard grind that's going to be required to do it.
Well, I think it is going to be a really hard grind. So again, I'm more than happy to agree with you on that. On votes and individual votes, I just think Nigel Farage is a force of nature. He's off campaigning in Thurrock as we speak. He's just a powerball of campaigning, and he's not. I don't think he's going to. He knows that his one vote is not going to change anything in the House of Commons. Not while Starmer has this. I mean, what the most shocking thing? Let's talk about this. The most shocking thing for me about Labour is that in the old days, old Labour, and I include people like Graham Stringer in this, and I had the great joy of meeting the MP Graham Stringer, and I immediately said, sir, I literally called him sir, I must shake your hand, because I had like this, he's a decent man. Maurice Glassman is another one.
Yeah.
He's one of their members of the House of Lords. These are absolutely
Yeah.
thoroughly decent people who care about their country, whereas Starmer seems to have like 300 bots that don't care about their country, are willing to say complete nonsense. The apex of that for me is Tris Osborne, who just recites things that are so obviously not true. He cannot possibly believe them. Like, we have galvanized the economy, jobs down. I mean, it's just, and Starmer just seems to, it's almost like a parasite has taken over the Labour Party. That's what I feel. What do you think about that?
I don't think the Labour Party has any idea what it stands for. I don't think it knows why it wanted power other than to get the Tories out. It doesn't seem to have been at any point a vision of what they wanted to do, how they wanted to do it, or where they want the country to go. And that has led to this sort of ridiculous situation where it's a policy on the fly, but there's no actual agreement between even the front bench and the back benches, because there's no overriding philosophy that forms what the party is there for. And I'm afraid to say, just hating the Tories isn't enough to run a country.
No, it isn't. And it used to be that they were a party for the working class. And that's what that's what I would have admired them for. And, a lot of my policies and interests in life are about making sure that working class people who want to can succeed. That's at the heart of most of what I believe. But this Labour group, they don't seem to have that. So I'm going to just drop this on you, Annunziata, because you probably don't watch me on the telly in the way that you're probably off doing your own telly, so you probably don't see mine. But I am a staunch supporter of Angela Rayner replacing Keir Starmer. What do you think?
Uh, well, I mean, I think it would give everyone a great giggle for about 2 days, and she would then crash the economy and probably lead to an early election. So not all bad.
No, but see, what I want is for the Labour Party to reconnect with the working class, and that's what it really upsets me that they've left the working class behind. They've completely abandoned them.
But Rayner's sort of definition of the working class isn't really the working class; it's the workless class. And I think that is a really big concern that Labour was the party of working people. It was the aspiring, it was the hardworking, it was the good citizens who didn't get a fair deal. That's one thing. That's not where Angela Rayner is. It's about handouts, not hands up. And I think that would be really damaging.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I have a more romantic view of it. I freely admit that tend to respect women more than I respect men. Not that I don't respect men, but tends to come quicker. So I may be wrong on Angela, but I'd love her to prove me right. And I'd love sort of the Labour Party to suddenly just discover its purpose. But it doesn't seem to have a purpose other than the unions. Oh, good news! I don't know if you've seen it, but the tube strike is off.
Yep,
Which means that means the mayor will have paid them bucket loads of gold,
of
more
course
Dane
it will.
geld for the gal for the Danes.
And all the unions know that they can push their way through. I mean, it is like a repeat of the 1970s, with the unions being far more powerful than the government. And
Yeah.
they demonstrated it as soon as they got in by giving train drivers and so on and so forth instant pay rises within the first few months. And now every union knows it's open season.
But it never placates the Dane. This is the thing about the Dane geld.
No,
It doesn't placate the Dane. So
no.
the doctor's got some catastrophic amount of money, something like over 20% increase, and now they're back for more too. They
They
want
are.
more. I mean, this is going to lead to a point like we had. So I'm not. I don't think either of us are old enough to remember. But Margaret Thatcher claimed, who governs Britain?
Yeah,
Who is in charge? Who is
yeah,
in charge? And we need to know. And actually, to the credit of traditional lefties, Tony Benn was very good on this type of thing. Who is in charge? Who is responsible? Tell me who is accountable. What's going on? And we've
yeah.
built this massively bloated, unaccountable state. Did you hear that the BBC is that? Well, the latest proposal from Lisa Nandy is that the charter will never be renewed again. So the BBC will become permanently unaccountable. They call it independent, but the word is unaccountable.
It is unaccountable and it has no democratic oversight. And this is a huge failing that actually we do need our institutions, the aspects of government that affect our lives to have democratic oversight. And we saw that with the Chief Constable of the West Midlands Police when Shabana Mahmood said, I can't fire him. Well,
Yeah, I
perhaps our
think she
Home
can.
Secretary should be. I think she can. I think she was probably wrong. And you would know the law on this, Stephen. But they always want to pass the buck. And when we were in the EU, it was great because you could blame virtually anything on the EU. And our politicians didn't have to take responsibility. Now we're more distant, although looking at it, it looks like we're getting closer and closer thanks to the underhand tactics of Starmer and co. Um, they don't have that to blame. They're finding other things to blame. So they get to blame the BBC for the BBC. They get to blame with the Quangos, the sentencing council, where again Shabana Mahmood in a different job didn't even know that they were changing the sentencing recommendations and couldn't change it. That
And what's
once you
interesting
farmed
about the
out,
Sentencing Council and the Charter is that Keir Starmer sat on it for all the years he was DPP. And I think that's when, because I get very upset about the punishment of paedophiles. We do not punish paedophiles enough. And okay, I mean, maybe this is one of I grew up working class and I cannot for the life of me understand. I understand why we don't burn them alive or put them in a wood chipper. Fine, that's civilization. I'm willing to accept that. But I don't understand why we don't have maximum penalties for people who harm children. I just don't get it. I cannot get it. I cannot get my head round it. But Keir Starmer sat on that sentencing council. And I don't know if you remember the oddity of this. He was supposed to prosecute Jimmy Savile. And Boris pointed this out. And somehow they spun that Boris, by pointing it out, had done something wrong. It's like, you
yeah,
failed to prosecute Jimmy Savile, but Boris is wrong.
and Al fired and all these others, and it never passed his desk was Keir Starmer's excuse. Well, an awful lot seems to not pass his desk, including clearly at the moment Mandelson.
Well, and that
Most bizarre. I mean, he has apologized, but to not even put in a phone call for such a senior position when it's someone of your own party that presumably you have met a large number of times is bizarre.
they all know each other. I mean, the idea, I mean, it's like us knowing each other. This is the idea that it's just absurd. We're not pretending that we don't know each other. Why
No,
why would you pretend he's like, oh, I didn't talk to him, but he lied to me.
yeah.
How do you
How?
square that circle? Go on,
I,
explain that one to me.
and this is where I think Lindsay Hoyle comes back into it. Why is he not calling him out for misleading Parliament? That clearly, if you say he misled me and then you say I didn't speak to him, the two cannot be true.
No, they can't both be true. There is no reconciling those two propositions. And yet he gets away with it. Where is the
Hmm.
Committee on Privileges? Where is what I called the kangaroo court when they were investigating Boris?
Boris, yeah.
Where are these people? Where are you? Come on, Harriet. Come riding in with your merry kangaroos. Where are you?
Yeah, and it somehow seems that it's always the right that get the raw end of those things, rightly or wrongly. I'm not saying that Boris shouldn't have been investigated, um, but somehow the left always portray it as somehow they're too good, they're too nice, so they shouldn't be in trouble, really. They'll just say sorry. But sorry doesn't really cut it when you've got a man who seems to have been allegedly, I think we have to use these words, don't we? Selling state secrets, as well as cavorting in dressing gowns with a convicted paedophile.
Yeah, it's the Epstein link is absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah,
And the fact that Starmer very clearly forced through the process. We know this because it was
yep,
expedited, it was rushed. It
yep.
wasn't done like normal. He wasn't vetted. And if it turns out that Starmer didn't even talk to him, then the whole thing is just what is Starmer even for? And this I think, is what we'll get to with when the Starmer period is over, and God willing, may it be soon. I think people will start to realize that he probably isn't actually doing anything. He's just like a pretense, a joke of a prime minister. He's not in charge of
Right.
anything. He's just a symbol.
Absolutely. And I mean, there was the book out, bits of it have been serialized in the past. Senior people describe him as absent, as going and reading quietly for hours and hours and hours, and then coming out and not saying anything. Um, that the ministers have given up on to get one. Well,
Yeah.
that's not a leader. To the extent he does do anything, it seems to be just try and keep the peace with his own party and secure his own position. But that's power for the sake of power. That's not helping anyone else.
But maybe power for the sake of power is the best definition of Starmer. Maybe that's all he is. Power for the sake of power. He wants to be prime minister so he can be prime minister.
Um, now he's been it. He should go. He's got as high as you can get in politics in this country. Now he should toddle off and let someone else do it.
Well, I just think we should stick him in the little room.
There's a concept I can't get my head around. What a nice 6x8 cell.
Yeah, and just have a nice little old lady, a genuinely nice one, who just comes in, 3 or 4 times a day and just calls him Mr. Prime Minister. Says, "How are you doing, Mr. Prime Minister? I brought you some tea, Mr. Prime Minister." We just put him in that, and then we can all just move on. We don't need to pretend that he's in charge of anything, because he's obviously not. Obviously, hasn't got the slightest clue what he's doing. But there are very serious repercussions to this, and I think we ought to talk about. It was the Pink Ladies reported that there were 12 rapes in 7 days. I think we need to talk about this, Annunziata. I think we need to talk about the betrayal of the country and about how it is the first duty of government to keep people safe. And that what's going on, quite frankly, I don't mind saying it. You don't have to say it. You can tell me if you disagree. But what's going on is these people, like Ed Miliband and Keir Starmer, all live in very lovely places. They are absolutely not in danger themselves. Their children are not in danger. So they don't give a toss about the fact that ordinary people's children are in danger. I think that's what's going on.
I don't think they can be unaware of it, because they might live in nice places, but they do still live in London. I mean, Keir Starmer could be, because obviously he's very protected in number 10 Downing Street and doesn't go anywhere on his own without policemen. And I think all of us would feel quite safe if we were sort of surrounded by lots of special branch. Um, but Ed Miliband, for example, must know quite how threatening London can now be. And it's every part of London. It's not the sort of stereotypical old, slightly dodgy neighbourhoods that
No,
when
it's
I'm in
not.
London.
It's not. Let's talk to our any listeners and viewers we have who may not go to London, who may not see London. I mean, it is an absolute. I don't want to say the word, but hole. It is.
Oh,
You know, I get the Bakerloo line, and it is absolutely plastered in graffiti outside the train, like New York in the 80s.
yeah.
Massive giant lettering. You know, if I get the Central line, massively graffitied.
Yeah.
These we are seeing this every day. Every day we walk past homeless people. You're just walking along what was once a normal street, and oh look, there's a homeless person there. And there's a tent city. I was going to the pub. Sorry to cut you off, but I was going to the pub in Old Portland Street. I got off at Warren Street, and I walked along. There's a tent city in the middle of the road. There's an embankment that they're not, listeners and viewers, they're not in danger of being run over. It's a big road called the Marylebone Road or the Euston Road,
Yeah.
and it's got an embankment in the middle, so it's got land and fences. But that's where they were. Let's just row after row after row after row of these people.
And anyone who spends any time in London, I mean, I go about once a week, normally just for one day, and live happily 150 miles outside London in Lincolnshire. And I got the train once, got into King's Cross, went to McDonald's, sat down to eat it, and literally slap bang opposite me at the shared bank table thing, there were three teenagers dealing drugs.
Oh,
No one does anything.
this is the decay
I
of
used to do
things.
television on a Sunday night, and I would park in Westminster, underneath Channel 4 News, where there is a public car park. Having finished at 11, I'd get back there 11:30. And I stopped doing it because the last time I did, I had to hide my phone, rings, my wallet in my underwear, because there were approximately 10 or 12 absolutely off their heads, drugged out of their minds people, men, hanging out at the entrance to the car park. On your own in the middle of the night, you do not feel safe.
No, and you're a pretty tough cookie. I mean, you probably feel safer than I do most of the time.
Well, also, I grew up 3 streets from there.
Yeah.
It's a part of the world I know very, very well, and you always do feel more safe in areas that you're very familiar with. And I lived there till I was 14. And now I wouldn't walk there after dark, basically.
Yeah.
It's not a good city anymore.
No, it's not. It's not. London is in an absolutely appalling way, and the reported rapes are through the roof. And that's just reported rapes, because one of the things I worry about, Annunciata, is that people are being raped and not reporting it because they just think no one will care. You know, I'm worried
Well,
about
we just look at the
unreported
rape
crime.
gangs.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, our mayor of London said there weren't rape gangs in London. Well,
He
he was lying.
performatively, when Susan Hall asked him a question,
Oh, that was unbelievable.
unbelievable. He literally, what is rape gang? Me, I don't know. What is a rape gang? It's like, and we now know that he'd read report after report after report about the rape gang. Liar.
Which had crossed his desk.
Well, quite.
Absolute liar.
I've
And
taken to calling them a
how-
diddy little monster.
I did once see him in the street with his security guards, and I hadn't actually appreciated quite how small he is. But I won't hold that against him.
Well, it's very
Napoleon.
rude because I'm very lucky in that. I mean, your brother's tall, but I mean, I'm 6 foot, so I'm not tall, but I'm not short. So
Yeah.
I'm very lucky to be able to hurl this insult around, and I appreciate that there are small men who are good people, and that we shouldn't just mock people just on the basis of their appearance. But I strongly suspect both, and Starmer's diddy too, and I suspect,
Yeah,
and
Starmer
so's
is my
Bernard.
height.
Yeah.
Starmer's
And so is
Something
Andy
bites
Burnham.
me.
So I always say that Andy Burnham is just Keir Starmer with mascara on. But I feel able to mock the three of them in a way I wouldn't mock another short man because they I feel like they have such a puffed up image of themselves that they do,
But it
maybe
is.
I'm just being maybe that's very vindictive of me. Maybe that's morally
It
wrong.
is fairly or not the Napoleon complex or the small man syndrome, and they do seem to have it in spades. Um, but if Sadiq Khan is denying there are rape gangs, how many young vulnerable girls in London have been raped, and we don't have a clue?
No, we
We
don't have a
saw the
clue.
suspicion with which the police often treated the victims in other cities, where they wouldn't investigate. They thought they were just drunk or drugged. And we're talking about young teenage girls below the age of consent, and they weren't taken seriously. Those won't be on any statistics.
No, it's an absolute sickness. It's a cancer at the heart of our society, and it needs to be dealt with. It needs to be dealt with officially as well. We need. So Starmer has promised a rape gang inquiry and not delivered. I actually don't really. I don't think we need an inquiry. We have Baroness J's inquiry, to which the names of every councillor and social worker who was responsible for the northern stuff. Or maybe we need an inquiry into the south stuff because we pretended it was a northern problem for too long. So
Yeah,
where I live probably needs an investigation. London, let's maybe that requires an inquiry. But Baroness J's done a lot of stuff up in the north, and
yeah.
that can just be prosecuted. Just prosecute them. I don't want to talk about it, and I'm not saying that they're
But
guilty because I don't want to prejudice a trial and everybody's entitled to innocent until proven guilty. But just prosecute them, just grow up
but
and
I
prosecute.
think we do also have to have culpability
Yeah,
for our public servants. That it does seem as though social workers, policemen, counsellors absolutely purposefully ignored that this was going on because it wasn't politically correct to
yeah,
admit it. And that should be criminal.
it
If
is
you're in a
criminal.
workplace,
It
if you're in a
is.
normal workplace, well, so why are we no one is facing anything that we obviously haven't had the investigation, but you'd have thought they'd at least be investigated. But I mean, there's a saying, who takes care of the caretaker's daughter, but who investigates the police?
Well, that's a very serious problem. But one of the so I put a lot of faith in Singapore, which I like as a model. They had three major ethnic groups which were in danger of massively falling out and
Yeah,
massive ethnic tensions. They managed to fix that and navigate that very successfully. They had a major problem with corruption of the police and the politicians. So they created an independent body that genuinely would prosecute anybody, including the guy who invented the body, if they had to be prosecuted. And we've got the National Crime Agency, but I'm not sure they're anyway tough enough. I think we do need a very serious prosecutory body that will go and do things like arrest Keir Starmer if necessary. And if necessary, we should watch the spectacle of a British Prime Minister being arrested because it might be necessary. And it's far better to be a society which will, if necessary, arrest the Prime Minister than one where the Prime Minister is effectively de facto, immune from prosecution. Because there are very
yeah.
serious questions about this man. And I would like to have the faith that some independent body is actively investigating it. And that's what Singapore did. They had this very, very powerful independent corruption unit that would investigate politicians. And I think we need that. I think we've lacked it for far too long.
They also had an extraordinary strategy on integration and avoiding ethnic tensions, which, as you say, I mean, it's a third, a third, a third. There was real risk of it properly kicking off. But they didn't take the approach that we have, where effectively some areas are ghettos, where people don't learn a common language with the rest of the country, and people are isolated within their communities. They took a very hard line. Everyone has to abide the same laws. Everyone has to behave in the same way. And I think we should be really seriously considering it here. It should not be one rule for us and another for them. And whatever your views on the prayers in Trafalgar Square, I've never known a Christian body do it. I've never known the Jews go and do it. I've never known the Hindus or the Sikhs. It does seem as though there's a special dispensation for Muslims, most of whom are first, second, or third generation immigrants.
Well, so I think we should talk about the prayers in Trafalgar Square because I think it is seminal and I think it is an important turning point. I always like to point out that I think it's something that our friends, our Muslim friends in the UAE, have been warning us about for years. For years, they've been saying, "Why are you taking in the extremist loons? You don't do that? We deport them. They're a happy Muslim country, and the UAE has different culture to us, and they get to live how they want to live. And I'm very happy with the UAE to be how it wants to be." But they were like warning us, you're taking in extremist loons. And one of the reasons that Christians wouldn't do the type of prayers that happened is, look, it would immediately kick off because let's just put our hands on our hearts. I'm Church of England and you're Catholic. If a bunch of Church of England people stood there in Trafalgar Square and said, "We are the only true faith, all other Christian sects are nonsense," what would happen, Annunziata? And if a bunch of Catholics, Roman Catholics, stood there and said, "We are the only true Christian faith, the Church of England is apostate," what would happen then? And that's what happened. It's this dominance.
Mm. And it is, and it's not as though there aren't mosques. I was reading something today about Whitechapel, and the East London Mosque, as I think it is called, has capacity of 7,000 people.
Yeah.
Now, I don't actually know what the capacity of Westminster Abbey is, but down the road is Westminster Cathedral, which is not small, and that can take 900. I mean, we are talking
Our Abbey's not small either, Annunziata.
Our Abbey's not small, but I doubt it can take 7,000.
Oi, my lot's Abbey. You've got your cathedral.
We've got our cathedral, but I doubt the Abbey could take 2,000.
Yeah, I don't know. They had to ration even members of the House of Lords, didn't they, for the coronation? So it probably can't take that many. There's obvious space. There are
places to pray.
Yeah, and there's plenty of mosques. And I mean, I used to be a local councillor, and one year our mayor was one of our lovely local Muslims, so he wanted the civic ceremony in a mosque. So we had it in the mosque, and we all went to the mosque. It was lovely, very nice food, although way too spicy for my child. But it's. Because we've got a big Pakistani community, so you cannot ever escape biryani and samosas, and sometimes the samosas let you see through time and space. That's how spicy they are. But
wow!
But it's that was a lovely service. The mayor's wife looked after, because I'm a single parent, and I took my child, and the mayor's wife looked after my child, and everything was absolutely fine. That's fine. They didn't try and pray in our town square. They didn't do some ridiculous ceremony on our high street. Why would they? Nobody does that.
And I don't think any of us want to ban being Muslim in this country, but it's imposing it on the rest of us that's the worry, and that comes through in all sorts of things. From the mayor is constantly lauding Islamic festivals in a way he doesn't for the Christian ones,
or anyone else. It's not like he looks after Sikhs either.
No,
I mean, we've got Mormons here. We've got a Mormon. Nobody looks after them. Nobody goes special dibs on the Quakers.
Musical.
It's just not fair.
No,
but the comparison, although it doesn't quite work, but in the 1980s in New York in particular, there were the Hare Krishnas, who were very, very happy-clappy Hindu, or a sect of Hinduism, who went around and they basically irritated everybody because they just kept dancing and singing in the streets, which is annoying if it keeps happening.
I always thought they were highly entertaining. I remember them going down Oxford Street when I was little. And they were great in their orange robes, and
but we exactly that. Well, I'm grumpy, so I would have found that irritating. But at least they weren't trying to completely dominate. It's the issue, the core issue here, and the issue that Nick Timothy of your party is taking flack from, and Sarah Pochin of my party has stepped up and defended him, and as have other Conservative MPs.
Yeah.
Kevin Hollingrake has defended
Well,
him.
Kemi Badenoch
She
in
defended, yeah,
PMQs.
upright
Yeah.
PMQs, but it's really Nick Timothy who has just taken the flack on this, put his head above the parapet, and said, this is not a celebration, this is dominance. And what was very striking for me, and actually I'd like your take on this, is that did you have you seen the long video where all the men are at the front, and then behind the men are the women and the children?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
what is that?
I can't get my head around. All these lefties are hugely supportive of Islam and progressive rights.
Well, they haven't had a female leader, though, have they? Where's their female leader?
They haven't had it. They say they're pro all these progressive rights, but they're not actually pro women.
No.
But equally, Islam is not pro trans. Israel is not pro gay. It's a very odd balancing position that, I mean, the worst at it are obviously the Greens, who are so progressive that they're somewhere in the 20,000th century, and yet support the most oppressive, the most backward-looking cultural norms that we have in the world.
Yeah,
how do they possibly square that?
Well, I think it's a product of weak men. And what I'd say on the trans issue is that Iran would happily hang you if you wanted to be openly gay or openly bisexual and proud.
Yeah.
But if you instead agreed that you were really secretly a woman, then sometimes they'd still kill you. But, 8 times out of 10, they'd let you live as long as you pretended that you were a woman. It's a way of controlling people like me who just happen to have same-sex attraction. It's not, and I'm attracted to both. So I've always found monosexuality just weird. I call you all monosexuals. That's like the gays and the straights. They're just the monosexuals. So they're just attracted to what I've killed you. But that's because to my mind it's like, oh my goodness, an incredibly attractive woman is walking past. Goodness me, and oh my goodness me, look at I was directed on Twitter to the pics of remember the gardener from Desperate Housewives. Goodness me, I mean, but but the fact is, I like to admit that because I just like to be very honest. And by the way, if any politician turns out to be a secret bisexual, any politician, I'm gonna go at them because I'm public about it and I get abuse for being what I am. And if you hid it, then you are a cowardly little, and I will come for you. But that may or may not happen in Annunciata. Who knows? But I just like being sort of admitting what I am. But then not making a massive fuss about it because everybody's accepted it. Everybody's nice to us. Yeah. But yeah, the Iranian regime would make me either kill me or demand I pretended I was a woman, which I'm not.
Yeah, I think it was he Algerian? The person who was in the Olympics, and
he might have been Moroccan. Yes, I know who you mean.
Moroccan.
You might be right. I might be wrong. But I think all our listeners
certainly
will know.
In their country, you basically self-identify as a woman if you're gay. Yeah. That's how the law basically works. Yeah. That you don't have to change anything. There's no operations required or hormone therapy, but you identify as a woman and then you can have sex with men. Well, presumably you have to marry them. I don't know how it all works. Seeing otherwise the woman could be killed for having sex outside of marriage, but not the man.
Yeah, we just need to work out consistent systems that work for us as a country, which I think we've done, and everybody can just stop just screaming and pretending. The problem we have is these men who keep trying to invade women's spaces, and these very, very, I see it as a different form of degeneracy. These people who want to push this onto kids. That strikes me as a particular like thing for hurting children. It's like the one is the men who just want to be in women's spaces so that they can pretend that they're special. And look, I'm a middle-aged man. I've lost my looks. I know what that's like. So, a lot of sympathy to other middle-aged men who've lost our looks. Oh well, it's what happens. But suck it up, buttercup. But these almost worse than them are these ones who they want to mutilate kids, and that is very, very disturbing.
And they're pushing through this trial of puberty blockers, having banned them.
But they
I think
shouldn't.
it's
They shouldn't. They should be
absolutely
arrested.
inexcusable. And when it's saying that you should have serious conversations about future fertility with 9-year-olds, something's
How?
gone very, very wrong.
We're both parents. I haven't even bothered telling my child's older than 9, and I still haven't bothered telling my child that I'm bisexual because it means nothing to my child.
No,
My child has been raised like a normal child, so
yeah,
it's just does not. It wouldn't even register. What does it even mean? It's meaningless. We shouldn't be having these. I mean, the puberty blocker trials cannot go ahead. It just cannot go. It's one of the things that can't go ahead. Something else that can't go ahead tonight is happening tonight, Annunciata.
it is.
Tell us about
Uh,
your views on the abortion up until birth.
The House of Commons voted through in 45 minutes an amendment to the policing bill last year that allows women to undertake an abortion on themselves up to full term, literally the day of birth. And it's being voted on in the House of Lords tonight. We haven't had an outcome yet. But I've got 3 children. One was happily born at 41 weeks, one was born at 37 weeks, and one was born at 25 weeks.
Wow.
And I was offered an abortion with her because the doctors said if she's born this early, because I was clearly in labour, I didn't know if it's going to be a boy or a girl, will likely have either be stillborn or very severe disabilities. And I was quite stressed at that time.
Yeah, that feels quite
not,
stressful.
not entirely surprisingly. And they sent a neonatal doctor in to explain how bad all these disabilities might or might not be, from brain damage to physical, to heart, to lungs, all these things. And luckily, I heard the conversation, but when you're on that level of stress, you don't necessarily really understand the implication. The thing I remember very clearly is my husband saying she will never agree to that. At which point my mind kicked in and went, I know what he's talking about. No, I won't. You're right. And we did carry on. And I have an 8-year-old daughter with no disabilities at all. She has
You and bless her.
glasses that are so mild that she wouldn't need them legally to drive. And that's it. And you can already, if they think there's going to be a major problem, abort babies up to 40 weeks. There is
Yeah.
no time limit.
Which includes a cleft palate.
Which includes, bizarrely, a cleft palate,
The
which
most healable thing in the world.
they've been fixing for donkey's years.
For longer than, because you and I are both old, but longer than us.
Yeah. No, I mean, I expect you knew someone at school, I certainly did, who had a hair lip and a fixed cleft palate behind it. But the reasons can be spurious, the reasons can be serious. I mean, one of the babies that was in the neonatal unit at the same time as my daughter had been born with half his brain missing. He was never going to be okay. And I think that's a rather different situation. But this is for perfectly healthy women with perfectly healthy fetuses to be allowed to kill their baby as it's being born. And the left will give you these wonderful, heartbreaking stories of women in terrible circumstances who've been prosecuted for it. If they had done it 2 days after birth, they would be arrested and investigated for infanticide.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. I wonder where we've got to.
I can, well, actually, on Great Peter Street, on Saturday in Westminster, absolute heart of Westminster, on Saturday morning, very, very sadly, an 18-day-old baby was thrown, I don't know, out of a window, and her mother has been arrested. and the baby was third floor window, the baby died. But at 18 days old, uh, you're a fully formed baby. You're a fully formed baby at 28 weeks old, 28 weeks gestation. Um, and I can't understand why we would think there is any difference between a mother murdering a baby that had just come out versus a baby that's about to come out, that it's the same baby.
Yeah. I mean, I find it because I was a single dad from birth, and I can remember holding quite rightly my baby came out, and my baby was quite rightly put on my baby's mother's chest and bonded with mum. That's
Yeah.
good. That's exactly what should happen. Good, good. And then my baby was taken away to be weighed. And then it's funny how they ask you if you're a man, they ask you. And then the nurse said, "Do you want to hold the baby?" And it's like, obviously. It's like, what? Other men who just go, no. No, no, I'm not interested, mate. I go down spoons now. It's all done.
Yeah.
What are the men who say no to that question? But obviously, I didn't say no. The other interesting thing I think you might find interesting, Annunciata, about the birth of my child is that I brought a hat which was deliberately how they try and gender kids and babies. So
Yeah.
I bought a hat deliberately that was the opposite to the gender of my child because I knew what my child was going to be. Just because I was just like, I reject the idea of gendering my child. Just leave my child alone. Let my child be happy. And I put it on my baby when I got my baby, and the nurse just said to me, "Oh, is this your second child?" As though I just reused a hat that like wasn't the appropriate hat. It's like, no, I just didn't want to put obligations on my child. But anyway, people are weird with men with babies. The other thing I'd probably like to just get off my chest, if you don't mind, is if you're a single dad to a baby, there are quite a lot of women who will just come and they will take, and if you're in public, they will take the baby out of your arms and hold your baby almost without asking permission. And I would stand there going, because I burn with rage to protect my child. So I'd be like,
Yeah.
you are this close to death.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think you understand how you are dicing with your life here. But yeah, this abortion up until birth is monstrous evil, and I think both of us are hoping and praying that the House of Lords block it.
Oh, very much so. The other bizarre thing about it is that it doesn't make it legal for a doctor to undertake an abortion.
But they're obviously going to bring that one in because so what they're
So
doing,
they'll have to retrospectively bring that one in as well. I mean,
yeah,
unless
that's
we're
obvious.
actively encouraging backstreet abortions, which seems highly unlikely as a policy.
Well, it's very dangerous to women. So
It's incredible.
it's almost like the Labour Party wants a woman to die in a backstreet abortion so that they can then go, oh, we've got to let doctors do it now.
I wouldn't put it past them, unfortunately. But also, it's very dangerous for the most vulnerable women
Yeah,
that, drugs by post and an abusive husband or partner. Um, I really worry because it's actually pretty dangerous taking those drugs late on in
it is. Well,
pregnancy.
so to praise your party, one of the things I think it got right in its 14 years was bringing in coercive and controlling behaviour as a
Yeah.
domestic violence offence.
Yeah.
I think that was a success. Um, and that was to her credit, because I'm not a massive fan of hers, Theresa May's
Yeah.
policy.
I'm no fan at all.
And it was taken through the House of Lords by a man I am a massive fan of, which is the Shadow Attorney General, Lord Wolfson. So I'm more than happy to credit your party when it comes to things that they actively achieved. And I think what I don't understand, Annunciata, is why there isn't a universality of thought around babies. How has the human race evolved to the point where a certain percentage of humans just don't value babies? How?
Um, I I have no idea. But I read an article actually from 2017 earlier today, where there was a debate that's probably still ongoing in America about whether a pre-26 week baby is in fact human. Um, and their argument is that if a baby is born before 26 weeks, it is not saved by doctors, it is produced by doctors.
That's awful. Your baby was 25 weeks.
She was 25 weeks and 0 days. Yeah. So I would have been 7 days ahead of this random cutoff point. Or she would have been. And that leads on to the obligation to try and save the baby. It dehumanizes completely anything before 26 weeks, which nowadays are incredibly viable.
Yeah.
In the UK, the cutoff for no reason abortion is 24 weeks because they didn't used to be able to save babies before 24 weeks. That is now completely untrue. And 23 weeks, 22 weeks, even 21 weeks can still live happy, fulfilled, and healthy lives.
Well, that's the
Um,
debate we should be having. We should be talking about maybe pushing the border back. I
exactly.
don't want to take the right away from women. This is not about The
And if
Handmaid's Tale. This is just about let's put the border in a serious place. And again, it's like this debate over the Muslim praying. It's like nobody's saying we don't want Muslims. It's just about there are still limits. The
Yeah.
try to express this all day long by saying that if you don't drink any water, you will die. If you drink too much water in a day, you will die.
Ah,
So the question is where you put the limit. Where's the reasonable limit for the amount of water that you drink in a day?
yeah.
That's what we're talking about. Where should we put this limit? And this monstrosity. Actually, I'd like to know more about who proposed this because I just can't even. What sort of a
It
psychopath
it
suggests
all came
we
out,
put the barrier
and
there?
there's a much simpler solution to it. It all came about because in COVID, you could get abortion pills by post. You didn't have to see a doctor. And it turned out that some women lied about how pregnant they were. Um, and they then got investigated. One of them, I think, was 36 weeks. But that's a lot of babies are born
That's
at
a very
36 weeks.
viable baby.
That's a baby that goes home from hospital in 6 hours. I mean, it's not a sick child necessarily at all. Um, and the Bleeding Heart Liberals thought it was absolutely cruel to these mothers to be investigating or prosecuting them. Well, the much simpler way to avoid that is not to send out abortion pills by post, to actually say you've got to see a doctor. They've
Yeah.
got to assess how pregnant you are. And if you're 36 weeks pregnant, when you have an abortion, you have to give birth to that dead baby. Well, if you gave birth to a live baby, you could have it adopted immediately. You don't
Yeah.
have to keep it. You've already done the whole pregnancy by that point. This is not about women's bodily rights. This is about a baby's life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just full cards on the table. We went through a miscarriage at 14 weeks. So that had that little angel had to be born.
Yeah.
Um, so I've lived through that. And it's not easy. But we didn't voluntarily. There was no
No.
voluntarily termination. That was just God's will or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, these are incredibly emotive topics, and the left have dominated them for far too long, and painted their rivals, painted you and me, and particularly your brother, as some sort of evil Satanist who just wants to hurt women. It's like
Yeah.
that's just not what we're doing. Can we not? Why can't we have a reasonable conversation? And for me, this apex, it's so close to the Muslim prayer discussion when Stella Creasy waded in and just slagged off Nick Timothy, didn't engage with him, just literally just called him evil and a racist, and they're just like, what are you that you so you're not willing to debate with him who is, and I will hand on heart, he's one of the cleverer people in Parliament, and I do think we should point out when people are clever or not clever from various parties.
Yeah.
You don't, by the way, have to be clever to be a good MP. That's another point I'd like to make. I think a good MP is loyal to the constituents and loyal to the people of the country.
Yes, but
Don't
not
need
a
to be a big brain to do
but
that.
not a local councillor and social worker. That I think we've got a whole large constituency of MPs who would be incapable of holding serious office. And would make very good local councillors because they want to deal with the blocked drains and the potholes.
Well,
but
this
they
is this is a
don't
very good
actually
issue.
have a
This is
clue about
Annunciation.
the big
This
issues.
has to be for episode two, but it is it's a very good, it is a very good issue. What just dealing with it topically, we should touch on the Iran war and everything. Although I think, to be honest, the nation is just embarrassed by our performance. I mean, we've been attacked, and HMS Dragon, as far as I'm aware, my latest update, it's still no
The lot.
nearer Cyprus than Gibraltar,
Yeah, no.
which, you know.
The entire uh, course of events has been a deep embarrassment to our country. From Keir Starmer refusing the Americans to use our bases. Oh, absolutely the wrong decision to make. That is not us going to war. That is
No.
allowing our strongest and best ally to undertake its actions, which they say they've got very good reasons for.
Well,
Um,
I hope non-lawyers have noticed how absurd it is for Keir Starmer to have pretended it was illegal to use the bases and then allowed him to use the bases.
indeed,
Obviously, both of those can't be true.
no,
Obviously, he was lying, and I made a YouTube video. I made it very clear. It's perfectly legal. They can do this.
yeah,
Self aggression in self defense, if there is a viable threat, was the basis of the Iraq War. Keir Starmer's initial position was basically arguing that Tony Blair is a war criminal.
yeah.
Now, there are better arguments for that because the threat from Iraq may well have been made up, and that may well require investigation. But the threat from Iran is unarguable. It's unarguable.
Absolutely, and we've seen it in real time that not only Cyprus but British people across the Middle East have been attacked. Where we have troops based in um, in Iraq and in other
Bahrain.
Middle East and Bahrain countries have been attacked. It's a very genuine threat. Our
Well,
oil
there have been attacks
tankers
on the streets of
cannot
London.
go through. There have been, what is it, 20 foiled terrorist attacks in our country. It's clearly a credible threat. And as someone, I've now completely forgotten who, said, if you can't depose a murderous and threatening Ayatollah, but you can't deport a convicted rapist, isn't it international law that is wrong? And I think the answer has to be yes, because there was a rapist today who has been
I saw
will not be
is
deported.
human rights.
It's human rights. He's got a right to a family life, and I think both our parties agree we've got to leave the ECHR, but it goes much further than that. We've got to scrap the Human Rights Act that embeds it in British law as well, and its tentacles spread widely. But international law cannot possibly be right if you can't get rid of the Ayatollah and you can't get rid of a rapist.
Yeah. It's not, and I'd argue in its defense that attacking Iran and getting rid of the Ayatollah, to my mind, was perfectly lawful in international law. The idea that you can take self-defense, I think, is absolutely settled.
Yeah.
Where I would criticize international law is massive confections of it, like the EU, like the ECHR, which have just become ungovernable blobs. And I say that on the EU because, unlike you, I don't have a position, and I've never taken a position on Brexit. I wasn't terribly interested in the referendum. I had a baby to look after. I'm much more interested after the referendum because there was a clear result. And all I'd say about my position on the EU now is the EU itself admits it's bloated and broken. So I quite like like. It's like, oh, I get you. Yeah, Mario Draghi. Yeah, good man. You admit that the EU's completely bloated and broken. Even von der Leyen, arguably today, because she's going to try and introduce a way to make it easier to have a company inside the EU. Now, she's going to fail because she's not repealing any laws. She's just piling more laws on top of the existing laws. But at least she's trying. That's an admission that we're not currently functioning. Whereas the Labour Party's view of the EU today and the Lib Dems' view today is like, well, we have to rejoin this complete mess. I mean, it's a car crash.
It's a complete mess. It's got such sclerotic growth. Its share of world trade has collapsed over recent decades. It's not where the world is going because it has tied itself in so many red tape knots. It can't function as it should. That there are great countries in the EU, but they're all
Of course there are.
hamstrung by
Yeah.
EU legislation.
Yeah, it's all Gulliver and Lilliput.
Yeah,
That's to my
yeah,
mind what has happened. And when people
absolutely.
just we don't, other bits of international law, the UN doesn't work, but Trump has busted it, so that it looks like it's going to go away. The WHO doesn't work, but again, that's not a massive problem. But the concept of international law is valuable and has value to us, and there is a use in having. We shouldn't ever deny its possibility. I think we just admit that the communists have been messing around with it for the last 30 years and they've made a complete hash of everything. That's what I'd say
I,
has happened.
I don't know how valuable international law is. Not on a global level. That I mean, if you look at Chagos, that was an advisory because they couldn't have made us do it.
No, yeah. So international law's defense, it didn't tell us to get rid of Chagos. It was
No,
only
I
the
mean,
morons who said it.
that seems to be Herma's pet project.
Evil Penfold. That's what I
uh,
call him.
he's a deeply, deeply worrying man, who we shouldn't have at the heart of government, I think, at all. But international law, when it comes to big issues that we do care about, I think the sensible nations all work together anyway.
I think that's
And
true. I think that's true. And I think that's what we should
we
end
shouldn't
this
have votes
podcast
from
on.
Russia and China and God knows where on things that don't actually concern them. And we don't necessarily trust what they think anyway.
No, I think this is where we'll end the podcast. I think we should rebuild the West,
Yeah.
save all the West, and get back to a position where if you're watching this and you're younger than me and Annunciata, like most of the population,
21.
you may not remember this idea of the West, but there was a very, very strong concept of all the Western nations, and it's ironically as a word because it wasn't actually everybody in the West. It was America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, India to an extent, us, Japan, just the modern nations, the ones who wanted to live well, the people who believed in liberty and freedom. And we must get back those nations who believed in liberty and freedom.
Yeah.
And we must not turn away from liberty and freedom because it's the best way to live. And every child knows, every teenager knows this instinctively, which is why I think votes for 16-year-olds won't necessarily go the way they think it will. Because I don't think a 16-year-old is going to ask for more parental control. I think they're going to ask for more freedom.
No, you've agreed with some things the Tories are doing, and I'm going to now say one I don't agree with, which is banning social media for under 16s. I think it's a terrible idea.
Good on you. Good on you. It is the worst thing that they've done. And it seemed, I'm not going to drive the knife in. Thank you. Thank you, Annunciata. I think, it's just a nightmare policy. Right. I hope everybody has enjoyed episode 1 of Too Right.
Damn right.
And the people will tune in for episode 2. We've now got to work out how we actually broadcast this to people because we don't really know what we're doing. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. We don't need to be these narcissistic people who know what we're doing all the time. We just get on and do stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you to Annunciata.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
And we will see you next week. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.